Ladies and gentlemen, we have someone from Texas. This is interesting because of what's happening in Texas right now. I have Akila S. Wallace, Executive Director of Faith in Texas. Let's get into it. Akila, good day. Welcome.
Good evening. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show as well. Maybe you can help make sense of some things happening in Texas. But before I get to Texas, this week marked the 1 year anniversary of the death of our brother, sacrificial lamb, George Floyd. His family spoke about what this experience has been like. The president of the United States, Joe Biden, he has given encouragement for the passing of the George Floyd Police Justice Accountability Bill, but no movement. Tell us about your organization, what you all do, and how does it interplay with what we're trying to get accomplished in policy?
Absolutely. So I have the distinguished honor of being able to, serve as the executive director with Faith in Texas, where I am in deep relationship with clergy, community members, and lay people throughout Texas who are deeply committed to bringing the faith narrative and perspective to how the oppression and deep pain that Black people are and have been experiencing in this nation for quite some time must cease, and how our faith calls us to see it and to move into action. So when I think about today being the 1 year anniversary of the loss of our dear brother, George Floyd, and then the pain and anguish that many people faced, it is our hopes through our organizing and collective efforts that people are called to action. And for that, intentionally in the ways that we are holding our legislators accountable at the local, state, and national level. So we have, potential bills that are stalled at the national level. And then even here at the state of Texas, Faith in Texas was in collaboration with various coalition partners across the state working to pass the George Floyd Act. And just last week, we took clergy and their voices to the Capitol in Austin, calling for the passing, but yet our legislators are just not taking it seriously. And they're trying to find ways to kind of overlook the fact that there's violence against Black people at the hands of police and those who do not value our lives. And so for us, it's really important through Faith in Texas, as well as through the collective efforts of the Black women I organize with across the Southern region, for us to call for policies, for bills that actually protect people.
I have a fundamental belief. I believe that policy is a social contract between the community and the government. And at the root of policy, you can find real spiritual dynamics, okay? Because it's about how you treat people. But let me pose this question to you, because I'm a man of faith. I believe in God. I'm okay if somebody does not have the same belief I have. That is not required. But how is it that individuals of the same faith, we're talking about Christians, people of the same faith could have totally opposite value systems? How does that work?
Well, I won't proclaim to be a theologian or an expert in religion or a faith. However, from my perspective in organizing with multi-faith people or people from diverse religious and spiritual backgrounds, ultimately it boils down to the ways in which white supremacy within this nation has ingrained itself into the deep roots of society, and how there are various groups within Christianity, specifically who and that are majority of white backgrounds, who unfortunately are taking advantage of scripture and holy text and words, and reshaping them to really, try to maintain the power from which they are trying to uphold. And so we have people who are trying to maintain power, who are trying to hold on to legacies that keep white folks in positions of power and influence and continue to keep Black and brown people marginalized. And so that is how faith is used to keep us divided. And then also how it contributes to some of the policies and laws that people within, especially here in the state of Texas, deemed to be appropriate. Here, even more recently, them trying to revoke abortion rights.
You know, I'm glad you brought up white supremacy. I have a theory, and here's my theory. I don't think they believe in the same God. I think their God is literally the God of white power, and not the white power that's echoed from poor individuals who still sleep on their mama's couch. Okay, you're not my problem. That person is not my problem. I'm talking about the sentiment, the belief that the white structure or the white societal structure is the dominant structure because of some type of God design. I think they have literally made whiteness their God, and anything that attacks whiteness or anything that attacks that power structure becomes the enemy to their God. And you see such extreme actions. You already know this. Critical race theory. That's literally a
Yes.
way to teach history through the context of a theoretical framework. The theoretical framework is to look at race critically. And they're saying, let's make that illegal to do, right? And you have individuals like the governor of Texas and others who are down with that program. We only have a few minutes left. I got to talk about the legislation happening right now in Texas. Literally, there's a proposal which will be signed into law because y'all governors crazy as hell. This governor is going to sign a piece of legislation which will eliminate your requirement to have a license to carry a gun. You can carry a gun in Texas, according to this proposal, without having a license to carry a gun. Talk to us about the gun culture in Texas, because it seems as if whiteness and guns are really part of their holy trinity.
Yes, and so here in Texas, they already had the right to, publicly carry a rifle, but now
Right.
they're expanding it so that you can have handheld guns and others as well. I mean, I will have to say, I mean, it's quite sickening to recognize and to see that like that is where they see and hold their power, and I also consider it to be a kind of really softened way of trying to insert some level of threat and dog whistling to very specific groups of people here in this state. For them to bear arms, and that to prepare themselves for what they may innately be believe is coming in the near or late future, as it relates to increased conflict. I've even heard language around a potential race war. But as people of faith, I just want to say, through the organizing efforts and collaborations with the Southern Black Women's Collaborative across the South, and the ways that we are intentionally organizing Black people, Christian Black churches, and other Black and Brown faith communities, that we are deeply invested and rooted in the belief that we will win, and that there's doesn't matter what your beliefs may be, however you may arm yourselves, that we are armed with something much greater than what they may feel that they have, and that we are positioned to be able to bring about a new day, a new political party, a new way of believing in the direction of this nation, and centering the voices of those most impacted. So you can arm yourselves and continue to go out this crazy rhetoric, but ultimately elections will be coming up in here soon, and we're continuing to grow and build Black and Brown voting bases so that we can ultimately change the tides of who is in positions of power in the state of Texas as well as across the South.
And Akila, that's the resolve required in order to transform policies. All policy in America comes from the same place. Some politician at some point
Absolutely.
has something to do with it, right? This whole issue, and other states are trying to follow, this whole issue with let's make carrying guns more available, more readily accessible. Let's pass laws where you don't even need to have a license to carry. Remember, there is a constitutional right to bear arms. There's also a constitutional right. You have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, but every right has a common sense restriction so that the rights can coexist. When your right starts to interfere with my right of due process or interfere with my right to liberty. We now need common sense regulation in order to make sure these rights can coexist. Nobody calls that speech control. You can't say anything you want to say. You can't put a hit out on somebody and then say, oh, I was just exercising my freedom of speech. That's a criminal penalty, and it's a criminal penalty that makes sense. What the governor and Republican lawmakers in Texas are doing, they are eliminating common sense barriers with constitutional rights, and it's going to end up being a nightmare in Texas. Give out your information. How can people contact you, reach you, follow you?
Yes, absolutely. I invite everyone to please follow Faith in Texas on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, as well as, to follow, go to our website, faithintx.org.
Thank you, sister. I appreciate you being on the conversation.
Appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.